And when I think about community, immediately I think about good things. I think about happy things. I think about my family, and my situation with my family is Mum and Dad came over from Zimbabwe, just them here, started in Bunbury, made their way up to Perth, and that is the extent of my blood relatives is my mum, my dad, and my sister. And that is us. And obviously that has expanded since getting married and having kids of our own, but for my growing up years, it was my mum, my dad, my sister, and myself. And the reason why I think of community as happy and great and joyful is because at Christmas time, our kind of family friends would get together. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day would get together, and suddenly I would be invited into this large family, and it would feel fantastic. And we'd do all these things that large families get to do, and I love it. I still love it. Christmas is like my favorite time of year, not just because of Christmas, but because of that sense of community that I didn't really have with just mum, dad, and my sister. We get to be bigger than what we are. We throw tennis balls at each other. It's great fun. But I love it. And I see community play out in heaps of different ways as I look around. I see community play out like that. People being welcomed into family. I see large families hanging out together. I see all these different ways that community plays out. And there's this one fun way that I get to be a part of community on most Tuesday and Wednesday mornings when I drive down Kingsley Drive. Kingsley Drive, does anyone live around Kingsley? Has anyone been down Kingsley Drive in the morning? There is a lollipop man on Kingsley Drive. And he is the happiest man in the world at 8:15 on a Tuesday and Wednesday morning. He smiles, he waves, he shouts out good morning to every single car that goes past. And he looks like Dick Van Dyke, so it's even better. He's got this grey hair and these big white teeth, and he's just got this, hello! That's wonderful. I love it. And I wind down my window, and the kids wind down theirs, and they shout hello back. And I go out of my way when I'm driving, whether I'm dropping Sullivan off at school or whether I'm just going to work. I actually don't go down Moolanda or Barradale, because the lollipop people are lame. They're doing their job. But I've tasted the guy who's waving and smiling and saying, have a great day. And that genuinely sets my day up wonderfully. So why would I drive down the other streets when I know there's a guy who's going to say good morning to me every single morning? It's incredible. And I wonder if we think of community like that, moments like that, where this really cheerful fella just welcomes me and says, good morning, have a wonderful day. And I'm like, you have a good day too. I'm determined to have a good day now because the man who, I don't know his name, but he looks like Dick Van Dyke and he's happy. And that's enough for me. Community is fascinating, right? Because I don't know that guy. But if he wasn't there on Monday, if he wasn't there on Tuesday, if he wasn't there on Wednesday, I would notice that. Where's he gone? What's happened? I was sharing this morning, I go to the gym and there's a guy, an old fella who used to be at Kingsley Church with me. And he's there. And we say good morning to each other and he tells me I'm not lifting heavy enough weights and we go back and forth and he goes on with his workout. And I haven't seen him for the last few weeks. And I was like, where is he? I miss him. What's going on? So I messaged Mike at Kingsley. I said, is Ian okay? I haven't seen him at the gym. He's like, oh, he's just gone away for a bit. I noticed his absence in that community. Community is an incredible thing when we have it. And it's something we see heaps throughout the Bible. It's something we read about so much. We read about it in Genesis 2, verse 18. Is the first kind of glimpse of a picture of what we want in community. And that's going to pop up on the screen. And it says this, then the Lord said, it is not good for the man to be alone. We get a picture of people being together. Then in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 and 10, we read this, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. I like that. It's like even just being together because work is easier. It's like honest. I like that. For if they fall, one will lift the other. But woe to the one who is alone and falls and does not have another to help, right? We see that there in Psalms, the start of Psalm 33. How very good and pleasant is it when kindred live together in unity, when people live together in unity. Proverbs 27, we know this one, iron sharpens iron, and one person sharpens the wits of another. So as we get together, even if we don't necessarily agree on everything, community is good because we build each other up. And then I really like this one. It's in Zechariah chapter 8, and it says this: "Thus says the Lord, I will return to Zion and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. Jerusalem shall be called the faithful city, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts shall be called the holy mountain." And this next bit's really, really cool. In verse 4, it says, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, all old men and old women shall sit in the streets of Jerusalem, each with staff in hand, because their age is great. And the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in the streets." So this picture of what it looks like to return from exile is a multi-generational community together in the streets. I think that's amazing. I think the importance of community is so obvious in the Bible that we don't actually need to talk about stories from the Bible about community, because we just see it there so clearly. I actually think one of the great things about the community in the Bible is we don't have to read about it, because we read about it in community, right? We don't have to read into the Bible community, because in community we read the Bible. It's not something we do alone. It's not something we do individually. It's something that we take part in together. And I think that is incredible. But as we look to life, as we look to 2025, we see life is easy to do alone now. And that's not been the case for like 90% of history, probably even more. It's been really hard to do things alone. It's only very recently, right? Like smartphones being genuinely really, really smart is probably the last 10 years, 12 years. Before that, we needed to get answers from people. We needed help with stuff. We couldn't just go on YouTube and Google how to fix something. We'd have to ask the people who knew what to do. Mum and dad become very important. Grandparents become very important. The next door neighbor becomes very important. We didn't know everything. I think of that ad. Do you remember the Telstra ad where the kid's in the back of the car and he says, why did they build the Great Wall of China? And the dad like gives this terrible answer. He's like, there's too many rabbits in China. And that's why they built the Great Wall. 10-year-olds don't need to do that anymore. Teenagers don't need to ask us anything. They can Google the answer. This idea of individualism and radical individualism is very, very new and very recent. For such a long portion of history, we've relied on each other to get things done. Now, community isn't unique to church. It's not unique to followers of Jesus. It's something that we see out in the world, right? We see community. But I believe that we are called to a unique kind of community as followers of Jesus, as a church community. I'm going to read Romans chapter 12, all of it. So if you have your Bibles and you want to get Romans chapter 12 out, we're going to have a read through that. A letter that would have been read out in full to the church. And over history, it would have been read in community. Now, your job this week is to read chapters 1 to 11. Because I'm about to give you like a 2-sentence summary on some of the most discussed back and forth chapters of the Bible. And I want you to go home and read it for yourself and kind of make sure that you're not just trusting my 2 sentences. The therefore that kicks this off is there because it shifts from God's mercies to our response to them. So chapters 1 to 11 are kind of talking about what is going on. And now we're going to read about our response to them. Things like justification through faith, life in the Spirit, inclusion of the Gentile, right? Stuff that no one's ever argued about, stuff that we all got really quickly and have gone, yeah, we're all over that. Because God has done this, this is how you should respond. So let's read this together. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, on the basis of God's mercy, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable act of worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind, so that you may discern what is the good will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of yourselves more highly than you ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, not all the members have the same function. So we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually we are members one of another. That's an interesting phrase. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Prophecy in proportion to faith. ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the encourager in encouragement, the giver in sincerity, the leader in diligent, the compassionate in cheerfulness. Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in affliction. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Pursue hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be arrogant, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far it is depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. By doing this, you will burn heaping coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Incredible chapter. Incredible insights about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Incredibly challenging, because we are clearly told to go and do something. I'd like to zoom in on a very specific part of that. My encouragement again, read that every day this week. Before you start your day, before you go to work, before you go to uni, before you go to school, if you can do it before your kids wake up or duck into the bathroom, right, and read it while your kids are awake. But can I encourage you, read chapter 12 this week, every morning, as a reminder of what we are called to. We're going to zoom in on this rejoicing with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Because I don't think the Australian culture engages with either of these very well. I don't think we engage with either of these well in Australia. Here's what I've learned about the Australian culture we live in. If you rejoice too much, if you rejoice too loudly, if you rejoice too often, if you rejoice too much about yourself, you will be cut down, right? Tall poppy syndrome. That's the culture we live in. Their head's getting too big. They're getting too full of themselves. We call it banter. We call bullying. We give bullying fun names. And we call it banter, and we call it just from putting them in their place, reminding them who they are. When I think about the Lord's Prayer, on earth as it is in heaven, I wonder what rejoicing with each other looks like on earth as it is in heaven. I wonder if it's shutting each other down when we're happy about something. But that's the Australian culture, and something I quite like and feel a tension with in American culture, particularly when I'm watching sport, is they don't have this problem. Right? You get to the end of Game 7 of a basketball final, and the best player gets interviewed, and they're pretty happy to tell you they're the best. And we feel uncomfortable with that, like they shouldn't do that. How dare they? Well, statistically, they were the best. They dominated. They are at peak performance in the top level of their sport. Maybe it's okay that they say they're good. There's something, a tension with us, right? Because Aussies and Poms, they deflect. You have a good series, the team did well. The coaches did well. The other team played really, really well. I heard an interview from the Melbourne Storm coach the other day. They won 22-2, rugby league. Won 22-2, so that means the other team didn't score a try. So their defense was elite. 22-2, and the coach is interviewed, and he says, we were pretty scrappy, but it's good to get the win. They flogged him. He didn't say, how elite was our defense? No try scored against them. That's top stuff. We are top of the ladder for a reason. How good are we? He said, good to scrap a win when you won by 20 points and the other team only got a penalty conversion, they didn't score a try. You can see the difference between our communities, the difference between our cultures in those things. And that plays right down to an everyday level. Paul says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. And I think this cultural stuff is the stuff that he means. Not necessarily for us to go grab a mic and tell everyone how good we are at a sport. But are we the person that cuts someone down who is going well? Is that part of our culture? Is that who we are? Anyone who's played sport, anyone who has done well in academia, anyone who has done anything well has seen this, right? You score a whole bunch of points in a game and someone says, hey, don't get too, hey, you got to play well again next week. Set a personal best in swimming or running, or, well, hey, don't get too full of yourself. There's not a lot of rejoicing in our communities. Now, why do we do that? Why do we feel so uncomfortable about someone else's joy that we can't even rejoice with them for very long? Think of the most influential people in your life. Do they build you up? Do they encourage you? Do they make you believe you could be better? Do they give you credit for the things you do well? Something I love about one of the guys who built into my life is he taught me how to take a compliment well. It used to be when someone would say, oh, you did, oh, no, shucks, it's not me, rah, rah, rah. He said, just say thank you. Just say thank you, be sincere. Someone's trying to build you up. Someone's trying to encourage you. Thank them for that. It was a really big life change for me. That sounds kind of small, but it was a really big moment. Last season, I was playing cricket, and there's a guy who came along to watch us play, and when we were 18, first in topside, he was like the player of our club. He was one of the best players in the competition. He played WACA first grade. He'd scored thousands of runs, and he was playing for us. And we looked up to him. And we were playing last season, and we're kind of at the other end of playing cricket. And he came and spoke to myself and another guy who we've grown up playing together. And this guy who he chatted to, Maury, is one of the best cricketers I've played with. Incredible, very, very good player. And this guy who we both looked up to when we were 17 and 18 said to Maury, you know what, there's one thing that I wish you had have done. I wish you had have gone and seen how far you could take your cricket. I wish you had gone and seen if you could have played WACA once, if you could have taken it as far as you possibly could have gone. And we reflected on that, and afterwards, the first thing Maury said to me was, I wish you told me that when I was 18. I wish he encouraged me when I was 18. Because when he was 18 and he scored 50, 60, 70, when he kept really well, they said you could have done better. There was no rejoicing in those moments. There was you could have done better. And that struck me. Because I'm now at the age that guy was when we were 18. And I think to myself and my communities, to the young adults who come around to our house, to the parts that I play here, to the team, and I think, am I rejoicing with them? Or am I saying you could have done better? It's a question for all of us. How can we be someone who rejoices well with others? How can it always be on our mind? How can I rejoice well? I've got lots of cricket stories. I was like 19, I was playing low grades of cricket, and this guy and his son were opening the batting together. So the guy was 16. They've walked out to bat, and the dad was chuffed, really pumped. How good is this? Playing cricket with my son. He's only 16. He's playing senior cricket. He's playing men's cricket. And there's a guy in our team, and this is something that's etched in my brain forever. Without missing a beat, he goes, Sachin Tendulkar was playing for India when he was 16. Guy was pumped to be playing with his son. Who wants to be around that guy? Right? I feel embarrassed when I'm with people like that, and I wonder how many times people have been embarrassed because I've been that person. Sachin Tendulkar was playing for cricket for India at 16. Guy's just chuffed to be playing with his son. How can we be people who are not like that, right? We don't want to be that person in our community. We want to be the person who rejoices. I surround myself now with a bunch of people who are here. And I want to have coffee with them. I want to hang out with them. I want to talk to them because they encourage me and they build me up. And I try my best to tell them that because they make a difference in my life. And very rarely, if ever, do they say, oh, but you don't get too big. Don't get too full of yourself. They just encourage. They rejoice with me. Richard Rohr says, transformed people transform people. But you can't be transformed unless you stop thinking like the world thinks. And that was in reference to that idea of do not conform to the patterns of the world. Transformed people transform people. But you can't be transformed unless you stop thinking like the world thinks. So as we rejoice with each other, how can we not do it like the world thinks we should? How can we just rejoice? How can we just be chuffed? How can we just be happy? And I think about weeping as well. Weep with those who weep. And I wonder how well we do that. Because I struggle with this. I struggle with weeping with those who weep. I don't know what to say most of the time. And I'm not talking about the really, really heavy stuff. I'm talking about really entry-level stuff as well. I've just had a bad week. You know, just haven't had a good day. I don't think we don't weep together well because we don't want to. I think we really want to. But I think, again, culture has told us something of how we spend our time. And to weep with someone takes time. The book of Job, his friends sit there for 7 days in silence before they respond. And their response maybe isn't great, but they're there with him and they take the time. I wonder for you, if someone rang you and said, hey, I'm having a tough time, can you call in and not go to work today and just come sit with me? How would that feel? Would we feel comfortable doing that? To call in and say, I'm not coming to work today because a friend's having a hard time. Could we do that for 2, 3, 4 days in a row? How do we not conform to the world but renew it? I don't necessarily think the answer is we call in 4 days off in a row and sit with someone. But I do think we have to look at our time and say weeping with someone, mourning with someone, being with someone who is going through something hard takes time. Very rarely is it a quick fix. Like I said, this is something that I'm pretty bad at. How do you make that extra bit of time when someone who clearly just wants to vent about their day gets that 5 minutes to vent about their day? When someone who's had a tough time just shares with you and you just listen. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's over a coffee, maybe it's after church. What does that look like for us to weep with those who weep? People talk about being generous. You know, they say, when I win, if I won the lotto, then I'd be able to be generous. Then I'd be able to give away a lot of that money. I don't need much to live. I'd be able to give away a lot of that. But what people say in response to that is when you're generous with a little, you're generous with a lot. And I think for us, when it comes to weeping with people, we think, oh, when a really, really bad thing happens in their life, then I'll show up. Then I'll be there. Then I'll be able to, respond well. If we can't weep with people, if we can't mourn with people, if we can't sit with people in the smaller moments of their lives, what makes us think we're going to be equipped to sit with them when they tell us that their parent has died? Or they've had a terrible health update? Or they've lost their job? Or their marriage is falling apart? If we can't weep in the small moments, what makes us think we're going to do a great job in the heavy moments? I like to surround myself with people who do that really, really well, again, because it's a good thing for me to try and learn and get good at it, because it's an important thing. A little while ago, some friends of ours lost their child like 8 months into their pregnancy, and it was horrible. It was tragic. And the husband, I sent a text message straight away, how you doing, and stock standard stoic male response, all is good, trusting in God. And I do believe he was. Meanwhile, Megs just gets active. Megan is my wife. And she heads to the shops. She buys stuff they need. She buys a toy for their daughter. She buys some nice fun things as well. He likes Red Bulls, so she gets him a few Red Bulls. Practical things. Puts it all together, leaves it at the door. They weren't home. She messages to follow up. Then following that, we have time with them where we don't say a lot. We went down to the beach and I didn't know what to say to Dan, so we just kind of sat next to each other and huffed. But I think that's important. And I felt so uncomfortable. And it's not about me, right? It's not about how I feel. Weep with those who weep. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Do not conform to the patterns of this world. There's a friend that we have who I know, no matter what happens in our life, I can call her and she will stop her work and she will come and see myself or Megan. She is a deputy principal. To know that is incredible. Not to call on it all the time, but just to know that. Imagine if you were that person for someone in your community, in your life. Transformed people transform people. But you can't be transformed unless you stop thinking like the world thinks. I think sometimes at the end of messages like this, we try and give a stock standard application. Hey, go do this in this week. I've given you some passages to read, so you've got stuff to do. You've got 12 chapters to read. You're going to be busy. But I do wonder what community looks like for you. Really. And I do wonder what community looks like for me, really. I wonder what community looks like when we finish church and go to part 2 of church and have coffees. Heard a podcast this week, and it's been messing with me, so I figure it might as well mess with you guys as well. The guy on the podcast said you should always look to be getting closer to living with someone. You should always be looking to take one step closer to be living with the people in your life. And I was like, well, that's not doable. I don't have a big enough house. And what he was saying wasn't that we all live together. But he was saying the deepest, most formed moments of community are shared in those lived spaces together. And he's saying, so no matter where that person is in your life, look to be taking one step closer to genuine community. We lived with some friends in 2017, the friends we talked about, and it was awesome. We lived with them for 6 months. And they're good friends, but they're not best friends. We haven't grown up with them. We haven't known them our whole lives. They were friends from church we've known for a long time, and they offered their house to us while our house was being built. Hey, come live with us. So we did. There's something different when you live with people, right? I found that out when I married Meeks. Like, we had at the end of the night when we were dating, it's like, all right, time to go home. You know, we finished watching a movie. And then when we're living together, the movie finishes, and it's like, well, guess we can talk. Guess we can find out more about each other. I don't have to go anywhere. And even with this couple, we would watch Gogglebox together, and Gogglebox would finish, and then we'd just chat about life. We'd eat meals together. There's something different about people when you've seen them in their pajamas every morning, right? You get up and you make breakfast, you're in your pajamas in a house with other people. And now when we hang out, there's not 15 or 20 minutes of chit-chat. We just get into life. How's it going? And it's just straight into those conversations. There's something about aiming to make all of your relationships that much closer to living together. I hope that can mess with you a bit this week as it messed with me, as you think about what it looks like to rejoice with those who rejoice, to weep with those who weep. We're going to share in communion together. I love communion. I think it's the best. Because we remember the death and resurrection of Jesus, but also because we look around the room and we are reminded that we are not in this alone. On Wednesday night at our community evening for the first week, we talked about the 4 different circles of community. There's the intimates, who are like the 1 to 5 people in your life who really you should be doing this stuff with well. Then there's the friends, which kind of grows out to about 15. And again, they're the people who you can probably do this stuff with, rejoice with and weep with. And then it goes to the village, which is kind of like 150. And I guess for us, on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, on a Friday, it's kind of like our church. And then there's the 4th circle, which is the tribe, which is everybody else. I love communion because we can't all be intimate with each other all the time. We've got conversations that we have with those people. And maybe that's after church, maybe it's during the week, maybe it's in Connect Group. We've got those friends, that second ring. But what we get to do now, as a village, is we get to share in community. We get to be reminded of what unites us, the death and resurrection of Jesus. We get to have a cup of juice. We get to have a cracker that's gluten-free. And in our time, we get to thank Jesus for the death and the resurrection. We also get to look around the room, maybe lock eyes with someone awkwardly for 3 seconds, and think they're doing the same thing. So this morning there's a lot to unpack, there's a lot to take in, there's a lot to think about in a week and an application. But right now, I'd love us to be present in this village community. The table is in the middle. There are various ways we can get there. My encouragement would be to walk to the sides and go down and then walk back. The team is going to play a song as we do this. Please look around the room. Lock eyes with someone. Smile at them. And remember that in community, we are made one through Christ. We must rejoice with each other, and we must weep with each other.